Well, Bev, I guess it's the turnaround, the unexpected turnaround after the unexpected events of late last week. James Marape was looking in deep trouble after around 50 MPs crossed the floor on Friday and really took control of the parliamentary process and put it into the period where a vote of no confidence could be moved against Mr Marape, and the opposition was hoping to do that early in December. Now, he turned the tables. The Speaker of Parliament came out late yesterday in a press statement, basically said the vote to adjourn Parliament from late last week was illegal and therefore Parliament should be sitting. So Parliament came back 10 o'clock this morning. MPs from the government only filed into the chamber and they got set about passing the budget. The opposition weren't there. All the opposition MPs were holed up, grouping in a camp up on the north coast of PNG. So for the government, they got their budget through and then they adjourned Parliament and said that they wouldn't be back until April next year.
Which is extraordinary. Was that even legal?
Well, that's probably where things are going to head next, is the courts. So there were already questions, as the Speaker alluded to, about the adjournment late last week that the opposition pushed through. Now we've got the opposition saying that today's sitting of Parliament itself was illegal and they'll be seeking the courts to have a look at that. So it may be the case that we spend a bit of time looking at the validity of this budget through the lens of the courts. And it may be that that adjournment that the government has hoped to push out till April may not stand. We may see MPs back in the chamber sooner than that.
Yeah. So where were the numbers sitting before the government pulled off today's manoeuvring?
Today's manoeuvring seemed to give the government close to a majority. There wasn't quite a majority of the total number of MPs on the floor of Parliament. So it's still unclear whether or not Mr Marape has a majority. So if Parliament does get recalled, then he could be in some strife. But it seems that some of the key factions that moved, some of those groups that moved across late last week, perhaps are reconsidering. There are some of the parties in Mr Marape's coalition that are split. So part of a party is with the government, part of the party is with the opposition. So over coming days, we may see those groups come back together. We may see them side with government or with opposition. And all this in the context of it's probably going to end up in court with the former Prime Minister, Peter O'Neill, leading some of those legal manoeuvres.
Interesting. Of course, as you know, as a long-time follower of Papua New Guinea, this is not necessarily uncommon. So what sort of sense are you making of how the parties are moving and reshaping?
It sort of feels like we're back to the old timetable of PNG politics, which is that 18 months is this grace period that governments get from votes of no confidence. And this is the 18-month window opening up for a move against Mr Marape. I guess we're perhaps unused to it in that Peter O'Neill, who was Prime Minister before Mr Marape, was very adept at fighting off these moves against him and had managed to stay in office from 2011 through to 2019. Mr Marape, so far, seems to have held this one off. He's certainly saying today that they've held it off and they've got their budget through. But it does show that the cycle for PNG politics is very much these window of votes of no confidence, and they're going to continue to be a feature of the political cycle. And
what does that mean more broadly, though, for the country and the stability of the country, trying to sort of recover their budgetary position and also deal with some of the worst social conditions that PNG has seen in many years?
I think this, it is part of the cycle, but it also it contributes to the frustrations, I think, that many Papua New Guineans feel about the political process, and that time frame, that 18 months, really isn't very much time for governments to get things done. There have been moves, there have been efforts through changes to the law to try to bring more stability to the political process and to stop the parties moving around. But they've failed through legal challenges. They haven't really stuck. So the challenge, I think, is for governments, and Mr Marape is certainly making this case. If governments are given the time to see their policies through, then they can make a difference. He's saying that the opposition should now ease off its pressure. It should let the government get things done. And if he can keep the opposition at bay through to about the middle of next year, then he's pretty much got a clear run through to the next round of elections, which are due in 2022. So if he can do that, he'll have a good 2.5, 3 years in office. He'd be able to point to a few things that he would hope he could say he's done in that time.
We will wait to see what the court cases finalise. Shane, good to talk. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Ben.